Hey, we're here.
Hey, did I do it?
You
did
did
it.
it. You did it. Yeah, we're live and we are, where are we, Jesse?
You and, well, we are in, oh no. Well, we are doing the history of the Dumas in Butte, Montana. I'm excited. Yeah.
Stupid phone.
It's all
We're
right.
live. It's okay. We're back.
Yeah. Who are we, by the way? I got so frazzled that you left. I was like, where did she go?
Oh,
You
muted.
guys.
I'm muted?
No,
Muted?
not anymore. Nope.
I'm not?
Okay.
No.
No.
Shit. So
Oh,
much
this is
for
gonna
our
be
live show.
fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am one of the hosts of the Emergency Encounters, and I am on no point at all. I'm here with our world's worst spy.
Dirty Birdie. And with us is our other super secret agent.
I'm the agent of chaos, Colleen, and I'm on location, and that's what I was trying to do when I left the stage because I hit something on my phone. So I'm here at the Dumas. I'm sitting in front of the Dumas brothel in Butte, Montana, and boy, do we have a show.
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
we do. I'm super
All right.
excited.
So, didn't you do a previous investigation here at the Dumas?
I did. The owners of the Dumas don't live here in town. They live, over close to Billings, but the gentleman who runs the Dumas for them, the Dumas brothel here, his name is Ted, and he's the most amazing person you'll ever want to meet, and his wife is absolutely adorable, and they kind of run a lot of the haunted stuff in town. So he let me into the Dumas about 2:30, and I was there until 5:30 by myself. He came in for about a 15-20 minute period and gave me the 2-bit tour, right? And then just let me have it. Locked me in and let me go. And wow. But before we get into it, we wanted to talk a little bit about history of Butte.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Okay. So we know Butte as this huge mining town, right? And it got started in like the late 1800s. It was called the richest hill on earth, which was interesting. Butte started as a gold and silver mining town camp in the 1860s, but it really started building up in the late 19th century when copper was discovered. And if nobody knows what copper is, that's what they use pretty much everything, and everything has copper in it, right?
Right.
So the demand for the copper grew, especially with the rise of electricity, because back in those days, copper was one of the conduits to provide electricity to homes, right? So Butte became one of the most productive mining cities in the world. By the early 1900s, it was producing more copper than any place on earth. So just imagine, like, this brought a lot of people in, right? And just a little tidbit, they have what is called the Copper Kings. And these were three powerful men that fought control of Butte's copper. We have William Clark, Marcus Daly, and F. Augustus Hines. So there were three of these, and that's why you hear the Copper Kings of Butte, Montana. William Clark, he was actually a ruthless tycoon, from what I understand. He literally bribed his way to the United States Senate in 1899. Yeah, he was a pretty upstanding guy. He famously said, "I never bought a man who wasn't for sale."
Wow. Wow. Well, just like our current day politicians, except that he was in your face with it.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting. I don't. Anyway, Marcus Daly, he was a working class Irish immigrant. He became a mining, huge mining person, and he started the Anaconda Copper Mining Company as well, which would dominate Butte for decades. So
Yes.
Anaconda and Butte kind of, there
Yes.
was two wars, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then in that time, there was a lot of competition. There was a lot of sabotaging, even murder over these mines. There was also like rumors that when the mines collapsed in explosions, it was engineered to ruin the rivals, basically. And
Mm.
yeah, and these mines are huge, right, Colleen?
Yeah. Yeah, they're huge. If you have never been to Butte, so everything started out underground up here. And there's over 10,000 miles of underground workings here of underground mines. Most all of the mines, underground workings are flooded now because they filled up with groundwater. And it's it's quite something to come up here. I'm in mining. That's what I do for work. And I come up here every year for training because this is like foremost the largest mining technical college up here is up
Yeah.
here, right? Montana Tech. And it's incredible the people that they churn out of this technical college, but mining here is king. It still
Yes.
is. So it went from underground workings now to placer mines, which are above ground pit mining. It's really something.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, again, if anybody ever goes up there, it's really interesting. Don't pass up the mining tours because they are worth it. It'll help you understand what was going on. So, but
Yes.
yeah. So speaking of mining, during this time too, there was also labor wars and violence that started in the 1910s and 1920s. This is the center of like pretty much labor politics is what started. Butte was like a hotbed for industrial workers of the world and other unions. The miners were fed up with basically the horrible condition, cave-ins and poisonous gases that come through the mines. And if anybody's been on a mine tour, and correct me if I'm wrong, Colleen, it's like pitch dark back in those days. Like there was no light, right?
They had some light, but not a lot. I mean, once electricity was run into the mine, they did that. But you got to remember that kind of like OSHA for
Mm-hmm.
for occupational safety and health, right? It's to protect the workers. There's MSHA, which is Mine Safety Health Administration. It didn't exist back then. MSHA wasn't a thing. They didn't care if people died because there was another body to fill right behind the place. There was so many different dialects and people of different nationalities working here in Butte that they had they had no smoking signs like in 13 languages, but there was like 27 languages spoken here.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the miners came from anywhere from China to Finland, from Norway,
Yes.
UK, Welsh, Irish.
Everywhere imaginable. There was Scottish miners everywhere.
But they had Chinese miners too, right? But
Oh,
they
yeah.
were
A
kind of,
lot of Chinese miners.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of
yeah,
Chinese miners. And I just wanted to point out that in 1888, Butte pulled in about $23 million in copper. And I
oh yeah,
just did the math for what it is in today's money. Oh, stupid mouse, work. It is approximately $7,666,300,000 in today's money.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if that was just one mine though.
No, it's
I
all
mean,
together.
all together. Yeah, there's gold, silver, and copper here, right? Copper was king here because of the copper deposits, but there's gold, silver, and copper up here. It the amount of minerals in this area is just bonkers, right? So, um, Jesse, did you want to speak to more of the history before we get into
Oh
the
yeah,
Dumas? Yeah.
yeah. It's because the history is really important on why the Dumas became what it was. So we talk about the mining and when it started booming up. This became like basically a multicultural melting pot, right? Butte attracted immigrants, like we just talked about, from all over. We got the Irish, Italians, Finns, Chinese, Lebanese, and more. It was said that Butte was the most ethnical, diverse city between Chicago and San Francisco, which is pretty interesting. So then we're going to start talking about the red light districts, excuse me. At its peak, Butte had over 100 brothels
Wow.
in that.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's crazy.
Yeah, the most infamous, of course, was being the Dumas brothel. It was operated continuously from 1890 until 1982, the longest running brothel in United States history. So the Dumas basically was created by two gentlemen who were very high in society. And they didn't want to name the building after
Hey,
their.
Jesse, I'm not sure. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hear you.
I'm going to go out and come back in.
Okay. So yeah, the
Maybe.
Dumas was created, and here we are again. That happens every time. So they were created by two gentlemen, and I do have the name. I just kind of lost them for a second because everything's going on. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened.
I don't know. There were two gentlemen that created it. They didn't want to name it after them, and so they decided to name it after one of the guys' wives, which was her maiden name. And so they named it the Dumas because they didn't want to have their name attached to having such a unreputable business, I guess you could say at the time. So yeah, it was interesting to find out. So Dumas, as we know, it ran until 1982. It does have secret tunnels connecting to the bars and businesses, so patriots can visit discreetly. Fun fact, there's also a lot of speakeasies in Butte, Montana. There is one in particular that I had the pleasure of visiting. And when you walk into this building, you would have no idea it was there. That's how awesome it was. So yeah, anybody go to Butte,
I do have a
do that.
bit of information on the speakeasy. That is one of the buildings he's going to let us into. And he helped design the part of the speakeasy access.
Oh, that is interesting because I loved it. I'll have to see if I can find some pictures, but
that's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, tell us about whoever wants to go now.
Bertie, do you have more history you want to talk about?
Well, I got information about how dangerous it was to work in the mines in Butte, Montana. And one of them is being a nipper, and a nipper is anywhere as a child, as a boy, you go in the mines at 12 or 19 years old and you fetched whatever the miners needed and brought it back down to them. And apparently they have these, I guess what you want to call cages, and they slip down in the mine and bring them back up, and they move at a high rate of speed, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So one of these accidents, excuse me, happened on September 3rd, 1911. And there's a couple of disputes about what actually happened. But 8 young kids at the Black Rock mine stepped into a steel cage loaded with old drill bits, shaft of steel, and worn out tools. Now, they actually forbade anybody to get into one of these cages with uh, broken tools and stuff like that because it was completely unsafe. Well, some of these kids decided to jump into the cages to go back up to the surface to save time because you get, you get you get paid faster and the faster you work, right? Apparently. Um, they got in one of the steel rods from one of the old shafts slipped through the gate and through the gates of the cage or whatever it was and started dragging against the walls and started banging against the steel beams that they built the shafts out of, and the cage wasn't like an elevator we have. It's kind of just there. So they're shooting up at a fast rate of speed with a steel beam banging against these things, and so it basically turned them into a ninja blender. It turned it into a ninja blender. They get up to the top, and 6 of the kids that were in the cage are completely liquefied. Apparently, there's a couple others that survived, but they didn't survive for very long. Another story is that they were just completely blendered.
So I took a picture of what Bertie is talking about, and I'll see if I can figure out how to put it onto the podcast when we're done, like in a comment section or something. Or I'll post it onto Pocatello Paranormal Research Facebook page. They're basically, there's a thing called a head frame, which is over the top of the shaft. So an adit is something that goes in horizontally into the mountain. A shaft goes down vertically. And these head frames, these things are huge, and they have these big hoisting cables, right? And they deliver supplies and whatnot down into the mine. And they're like a man elevator. You step into it. There's a series of them on 2 sides of the head frame, and they're on there's a huge cable and
like this just, one. Did I share it right?
Nope, I don't see it. They were so incredibly dangerous. And that's probably what these kids were in when this went horribly wrong. I walked up to this head frame. We were at the Amorosa mine, I think it's called. And I walked up to the head frame where these man elevators are and took a picture of them. It was like this overwhelming. You could feel like just pain. Like people got hurt in these things every single day, and there was hundreds of them around Butte. I don't see it, Bertie.
Oh, sorry. I'll try to share it again.
I found the name, and I should have known this when I first started, but the name of the 2 brothers that owned the brothel, when they first opened it, they were French Canadian. It was Joseph and Arthur Nadeau.
Yeah, my farrier, my horseshoer, had the same last name, same spelling.
Oh, really?
Nadeau. Well, she said Nadeau, but Nadeau, how French Canadian. Yep. I still don't see it, Bertie, so I don't know, but we will we'll share a picture of these elevators, and God dang it. So we went to a field trip on Monday as part of this mining training that I was at. We went to several locations, and one of them was this, I think it was called the Amorosa mine. And I took a bunch of pictures of all of this equipment. And like the whole time I'm looking at this, there's just these giant cogs and gears and cables, and there's no guards on anything like OSHA would require, and there's no safety devices like MSHA requires now. So MSHA is the Mine Safety Health Administration. OSHA, as we know, is Occupational Safety Health. So on the mine, MSHA rules, and there's no safety, nothing there. There's just
It's like,
cogs and gears and electrical stuff everywhere and batteries, and yeah.
this is why I'm scared of heights. I'm pretty sure, because I could not get into that. And with hope for the best. I hope I make it down okay.
Yeah, it's dicey stuff. And was there anything else on that stuff, Bertie?
Not too much. I mean, some of the people that said they saw what came up was just, yeah, it's not safe for YouTube. It's just, it was a
ninja blender. It was a ninja blender.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that happening. And when you're here in Butte, you can go up to the Granite Mountain Mining Memorial, which overlooks, you can't really see the Berkley Pit from the memorial, but it talks about one of the largest mining disasters here with the fire that broke out.
Oh, yeah.
And what happened, it was just, it was just horrible. And so many people have died here. Like I said, there's 10,000 miles of underground workings right here in Butte. And the reason why, if you know anything about Butte, we have the Berkley Pit, which is this giant placer, or it's a pit of water, right? And it's very toxic. So they have air cannons and noise cannons and everything else to try to keep the birds from landing on it, because the water is so toxic, as soon as they land on it, they die. So they have environmental measures in place, and everybody's like, well, can't they take the water out of the pit? Well, number one, it's groundwater. So the groundwater keeps filling in the pit. But if they take the water out of the Berkley Pit, the town collapses. The water has to stay in the Berkley Pit because the hydrostatic tension of the water underground is what keeps Butte from collapsing into the 10,000 miles of underground workings.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine that?
Yeah. That otherwise you have subsidence and the town just collapses all over Butte. All over the whole mountain would collapse if you drain it.
Wow.
It would be impossible to drain entirely anyway, because it's groundwater. It's always filling up. But still, the Berkley Pit, water tension saves the town of Butte from collapsing. So think about that. Anyway.
Oh my heck.
Yes. So today, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, another thing I came across was from the 1900s to about 1917. Wrap this around your brain. About 2.2 thousand people died in the Butte mines.
When?
Around 1900 to about 1917, 2000.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an incredibly dangerous occupation back then. It's dangerous now, but we have so many safety protocols in place. A little bit about Butte and the environmental aspects of mining, right? So Butte is copper's king here, right? So there's copper, gold, and silver. There's sapphires. There's a lot of different stuff that they're mining here, but copper is king. But in the process of mining and the wastewater, you have the Silverbow Creek that runs through Butte, and it runs up to through Deer Lodge. So it wraps around Butte to the west, and then it goes up north and it goes into Deer Lodge. Well, there was also another thing here with the lead smelters everywhere. And that goes up through Wallace and Kellogg and all those areas, right? Because in World War I and World War II, we needed the lead for ammunition, right? So we had lead smelters everywhere. Well, the smelters, as it's doing its process, out the top of the stack, you have lead particles coming out of these smelters, and it is contaminated land for hundreds of miles, basically, because it volatilizes, and then the wind takes that air, and it just, that lead just goes everywhere. So the EPA had come in to this area, Butte, Wallace, Kellogg, all those areas, and started cleanup actions under Superfund, which started in the 70s from the Love Canal. And they've done all of this restoration. And Montana DEQ, which is Department of Environmental Quality, and the Bureau of Mines, and all these places have come together, all these agencies. And they've done these really incredible cleanups here. So now the Silverbow Creek is clean. And it's been replanted, and the sediment's been dredged out, and the fish is coming back, and the birds are coming back to all of these areas that were it was dead. Like, if you looked at pictures, historic pictures of the Silverbow Creek, it was just, it was just wasteland. It was dead.
Yeah.
So at least, I mean, something good has happened, right? And so this part of the community's been cleaned. A lot of soil's been stripped. They have water treatment facilities now that treat this underground water that does come out of the mine, and they treat it, and it's clean as it comes out, and then it's released. But it's been a legacy. All these mining districts have a legacy of environmental problems.
Yeah.
Isn't there a huge smokestack still in Anaconda somewhere?
Yeah, the Anaconda stack is still there. It's actually considered historic now. So a lot of the stacks, if you go through Wallace and Kellogg and some of these places, you'll still see the stacks. They're not functional, but they're considered a historic monument now. So they're still there.
Crazy.
Yeah. And the slag pile at Anaconda, not all of it has been capped yet. So it's still there. I just was by it 2 nights ago to look at it. But it's nice to know that we're doing cleanup, and we're getting there. We're getting ahead of it now. So things are starting to come around. I kind of wanted to get back a little bit to the Dumas brothel.
Yes.
So there was a couple other statistics I wanted to read to you guys about what was going on in Butte during the era of these brothels. One of the things that was interesting to me was the red light district up here in Butte had 800 girls working in 3 different shifts, because the men were working in 3 different shifts.
Yeah. And wasn't it like, statistically too, like there was 1 girl to every 50 men?
I don't know about that. What was interesting to me was the way that the Dumas was built. There's 3 stories to the brothel. You had the basement, and the rooms that the girls worked in were called cribs. So now I know what the slang language comes from.
I knew you were going to say that.
And call it the crib. Where's my crib? That's my crib. I did not know that that's the language.
I don't think they knew that either. Now we do.
Now we do. So
and
the
now
rooms
we know
that the girls worked in were called cribs, and they had the basement level, they had the street level, and then they had the upper level. The basement level, and go back to our live that we did today. I was locked into the brothel for about 3 hours by myself. Ted did come in for a short time and gave me a little bit of a tour, which was cool because I didn't know some of the history he provided. But I wanted to be locked in while I was here to see what would happen, like what were my experiences. And I have to say, it was pretty quiet for me. It wouldn't be quiet if Jess was here, or Celeste, or Susie, or Carrie, because you're our mediums and you draw out all that activity. For me, it was pretty quiet, and you actually saw them behind me, but I didn't know they were there, Jess, because we were talking earlier. I came in with the feeling of being incredibly respectful to the ladies of the house, because it's their house. It's not me to come in and judge them for what they did for a living. So I wanted to be very respectful. And so they were very quiet. And you said something interesting, because you said, Jess, that had I gone in there with other than respect for them, it would not have been so quiet.
Correct. I did, because some people go in there and want to provoke And there's been, you know, talk about there's a negative entity or an evil entity there. Yeah, there is one, but I think if you go in there with a respect, understanding, and you're not there to basically cause a fight, you know, I think you'll have a little bit more better communication. But I think if you're just going in there just to provoke them right away, that's not okay. That I find that disrespectful.
Me too.
You know?
And I didn't go in there thinking this was a clown show or anything else. This was a place that women worked, women lived, women cried, and women died. And I did not want to show them anything but respect. You got to remember the time frame that this was going on. These women, a lot of women had no other opportunity but to sell themselves in order to feed themselves. So they weren't educated. They weren't married. It was tough. So the bottom level of the Dumas was strictly for the miners. And there was a mining tunnel and a mining access, and they were not allowed on the ground floor or the top floor. They were miners, and they had tiny little cribs down there for the women to work in. It was basically big enough for a bed and a chair, and that was it, and a curtain, and that was it. And there were tiny little rooms. I will post on Pocatello Paranormal and our YouTube site some of the pictures that I took of the cribs. There was even a small crib for transvestites if they were so inclined. And Jesse, you said something about the bartenders had to be a part of that. So if there was a person that came in and
if you were a male bartender and somebody came in and they're like, I'm not looking for a girl, that's what you signed up for. So
so
that movie comes back to mind so fast.
What movie?
It's a cult classic. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. All I know is the song is I'm a Sweet Transvestite.
Oh my goodness.
Are you talking like Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Yes, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah. That's like, absolutely.
It's one of the best movies ever.
Songs. I know. So anyway, then there's the main floor, and the main floor of the Dumas had the madam's room, and it had like a parlor, and Kara, it was Rocky Horror, and they added later a bar to lure men in, like they needed to be lured. But anyway, so the main floor was kind of the middle class, was for the middle class, right? They weren't working in the mines, so maybe storekeepers and whatnot, if they wanted to come in and have some ladies of the evening for that night. And then the top floor were for the very wealthy, the very elite. And Ted was talking earlier about what the difference in dollars that the girls would make. So if you were a girl in the basement working with the miners, you made $1 to $3 per customer.
And that's pretty much all the miners' wages, right?
I don't know. I honestly don't know their wages. They got paid pretty well for their work at the time, but not enough for the dangerous work that they did. You know what I mean? Then the ground floor, they made somewhere, I think he said somewhere like from like $3 to $10 maybe per customer. And the top floor, they could make $100 to $500 per customer because there was no time limit and anything went.
Well, and it's like they rented a room, right? It was like that room was they would rent a room that was their room, and they didn't live there. They just came to work like anybody else would.
So the gals on the top floor were some of the girls, he said, actually moved to Butte with the dream of being a top floor Dumas girl
or a madam,
because Or a madam, yeah, but they made so much money considering 100. Think about that kind of money per customer at that time. They were making so much more than the guys that were down in the underground workings of a mine.
Yeah.
But there were several murders here in the brothel. There were women and men killed here in the brothel. And there were other men that they believe died from being shoved down the stairs. The stairs are like crazy. It's crazy. So, I mean, you fall down the stairs, you're not going to live.
I was going to say, wasn't there a lot of laudanum stuff going on in there too? One of the things was a lot of laudanum abuse, which is, heck, how do I say this? It's like whiskey and opium mixed with a few other things. And they would get the miners addicted to this stuff, so they kept coming back.
That makes a lot of sense because right around the corner is the oldest Chinese restaurant in Montana, and it's still operational, and it had opium dens and a brothel as well.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they were getting the guys addicted. They did open up a wall here downstairs, and I'll show you pictures of that, and they found cases of moonshine. So there was all kinds of stuff going on in here.
Yeah. Well, like they said, as soon as this place got booming, somebody said, like, pretty much like big money, big problems.
Yeah. The town was really rough. Butte was rough, man. I mean, there were so many mines. There are so many mines here. I mean, even right now, when you look at how many head frames are sticking out of the landscape of old mines, that's just a nod to what was here. There's so much mining here. It was very, very rough. And and like we said, there were so many different nationalities here. Not everybody could communicate. So I wondered, like the men coming in, some of them probably didn't speak whatever language the women were speaking, but it was known what they wanted. And they devised their own timing system. Ted said they had a way to devise their own timing system, and it was so much money for so many minutes, and that was it. A minute over that, you were paying X amount or more. So
I think there was like a signal on their door.
They had some kind of signal that they devised, yes.
Yeah.
And you know, when I came in, the equipment, I went upstairs. Where I was drawn to immediately was upstairs around room 15, 16, and 17. There's no room 13 in the hotel. Found that interesting. I noticed that when I was walking around, I'm like, we're missing a number. There's no room 13.
I was watching that live, and I'm like, that's bad luck. It's always been bad luck.
I know. Every hotel thinks that. But the equipment was hitting really, really fast upstairs. I put it all up on the banister of the top floor, and the equipment was hitting pretty fast. And I was hearing kind of like the chuckling or giggling of like a teenager. I would say she's anywhere from like 16 to 18, that kind of voice. I would hear her. I heard a lot of footsteps in here, a shuffling and footsteps and walking around. And then Jess, you heard a male voice when you and I were talking.
Yeah. You were talking about donating, and you told the amount, and then I heard a male's voice behind you, and you didn't hear it, but I heard it. It was kind of weird, and I think he was like, I don't know, he's like, oh, ha, ha. What do you got?
Oh, yeah. And when I was watching your live, and you said you heard a music box, but you didn't know where it was coming from, I had a feeling that there's a music box either hidden above or in the wall or under the floorboard somewhere. And the only reason why I'm guessing this is because at the Red Onion Saloon, when people were renovating the saloon, it was also a brothel. It's in Alaska. when they were renovating it, they lifted up some floorboards and found this absolutely, it was either the wall or the floorboards, but they found this absolutely pristine, gorgeous dress that
Oh,
was
wow.
hidden in there. And
Wow.
people were thinking that somebody gave this to one of the ladies of the night and she hid it, because you're a lady of the night, you don't really have that much money. Somebody gives you a very nice gift and you work around a bunch of other ladies that if they see it, they're going to steal it. So what
Yeah,
do?
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't have a ton of experiences while I was here, but I also block a lot of stuff. I didn't know, like, a lot of people were warning me about this place, like, don't go in alone, or, oh, there's this guy and that guy. And I just walked in as respectfully as I could. And I think, I didn't have a ton of experiences because I wasn't antagonistic. I think if you come in here antagonistic, it's going to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Ted showed me some videos of things that have gone on here that people have captured and photos of apparitions that are pretty phenomenal. This place has seen a lot. I wanted to speak a little bit about, and Jess, you had some information on the babies that were born here.
Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of take it back for just a minute.
Yeah.
So when we talk about their work, we have to remember that, you know, you're correct. The three levels of the brothel. You have the bottom. There's no running water down there. There's no way for women to really clean themselves, if you must. And I, you know, I mean, that's a
Right.
harsh reality. And then the top floor had running water, and I'm sure you've seen the sinks in there when you went through.
Yeah.
We also have to talk about, like, there was really no protection, if that makes sense, back in those days. You know, the Chinese developed herbal remedies for them to use. They were looking for different birth control potions, and you know, there is such thing as diseases that some of them could get. You know, so these are some of the dangers, as well as abuse. You know, Dirty, you were talking about Latin and opium. A lot of these women use that is because it kept them
Docile.
kind of
Disassociated. No, I think
because
not docile. Okay, maybe docile is not the wrong word, but disassociated.
Yeah, there also could have been addicts. Also, you got to understand that unfortunately there was a lot of botched abortions done here. They were not allowed to really, if you're working, being pregnant was not really the best thing in those times, as well as working this kind of work. There was a few that went all the way to 9 months. There's been rumors that babies were born and either they were taken. There was a lady named Gertrude. She was actually a doctor that did botched abortions, and as well as steal babies and sell them on the black market. And sometimes there's one story I read that which particular happened at the brothel. The lady gave birth, literally took the baby with the placenta attached and gave it to this couple that bought the baby with still gunk on it. And she would tell the girl who had the baby, "Oh, I'm sorry, your baby passed away."
Yeah, it was bad. There was also rumor, I don't know if this is true, there was a furnace downstairs that maybe some of the babies were placed into. I don't know if that was true. I do know that I used to inspect crematoriums as part of my work, and they have to burn incredibly hot in order to consume a body. But you got to remember that a newborn's body doesn't have the bones like an adult has, so it would be easier to dispose of them. So I don't know. I didn't get, other than it was just the ick factor of hearing the story and seeing that old furnace sitting there. I didn't get a whole lot of feelings, but it wouldn't surprise me if she
Yeah.
didn't have a buyer, that the
Yeah.
baby was just gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And yeah, it's just really sad of what they had to do. There's a lot of girls that passed away because of the botched abortions who bled to death. You know, and then yeah, there was also the abuse from maybe some of the minors that came in and beat them. There was I believe a young gal that died either upstairs or in the basement. She got beat to death or murdered.
upstairs, I believe. She was
Yeah.
upstairs.
I believe that her handprint is still there, or there was a handprint that was still there. I can't quite remember.
I did see the handprint, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, he did speak to Ted, spoke to that murder. And
Yeah.
so, but there was a lot of stuff that happened up here that wasn't documented because the
Yes.
paper, he said the paper wouldn't allow a lot of the details of these brothels to be published because it was so indelicate to the rest of the population that they finally stopped printing a lot of the stuff that was going on in these places. And this
Yeah.
one was no different than any other brothel. There was a lot of violence that was occurring here. If you know, a lot of the men didn't get their way with what they wanted, they would take it out on the women that they were paying. And
Yeah.
it was bad. It was really bad. And so there's been a lot of people that have come through this brothel that have had really negative experiences. I did not experience that. Doesn't mean that they didn't have it. These
Right.
brothels were terrible. But they were a lot of these women's only hope for survival. So it's, man, you know, and this one, what was interesting to me was, so the reason why the United States really shut down brothels to begin with was in World War I, they shut down
Sorry.
they shut down brothels because they didn't want to treat the VD that the men were getting. It was costing the government a lot, and it was taking men out of active duty because of having to treat the men. So they were shutting down brothels. So they came in and they shut down the brothel, but the brothels still, right? They were still active. They were just being a lot more concealed about what they were doing. And it wasn't until World War II that they were coming in and trying to shut them down with a hard fist, like, you will shut down now. And still some of them, like this one, kept working. So this one kept working until the 80s, I think.
Yeah.
1980. So it was over 100 years this one was active.
Yeah, till the 80s. And apparently this brothel is so adept to government changes that they used loopholes until the 80s, until they really shut them down.
Yeah, and then I think the madam who was working it, was it Ruby, who was in the 80s, who was running this brothel, but she was shut down. It wasn't the brothel, it was because of income tax evasion. They got her because she wasn't paying her
Tax
taxes.
evasion, yep.
So it was like a racketeering in the mob. I mean, they didn't get him for his mob activities, they got him for taxes, basically.
Well,
I believe she did 6 months in jail for that.
Weren't these ladies so adept to using phrases that one of the madams said, come on in and get a $5 lunch?
Yeah, now that was, so Ted said that for quite a while they were doing $5 lunch specials for the high school boys. To get the high school boys into the brothels, that's what they were calling them, were $5 lunch specials. And it was getting them to the, you know, getting them into the door and saying, look how good this can be. And these guys were getting hooked on it before they even became employed. They were coming in, they started them young, and they were high school boys, and $5 lunch specials. Yeah. I mean,
hot
it's
dog
crazy.
has a different meaning.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because every owner of the Dumas had a tax thing going on with them. So they would fall behind on their state income tax, and the state would put a lien on, and so it just like, it was like the curse of the income tax, basically, to everybody who owned it. And so there's a lot that the owners had to pay to keep it from going to like foreclosure. And I think the last owner, is it Ted, the owner's now? I think
no, he's the manager. I think
okay.
David owns it. Yeah.
I think when I was reading something that they literally were getting ready to leave town when it was being sold because the taxes were so behind. And just real quick, I wanted to say Michael, who owned it before these people did, he passed away. And if anybody doesn't remember, he was on the Dead Files and Ghost Adventures. He was being affected really bad by the place.
Oh,
it was
interesting. I'll have to go back and watch those.
Yeah. I believe Amy Allen said that he was the reincarnation of the original owner.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Wow.
It was a pretty interesting, and he looked just like the guy, like
wow,
spot on. But anyway, I just wanted to, say rest in peace, Michael. He was actually a very nice man. I met him one time. So, and yeah. Anyway, getting back to the story, I guess he seen it in the paper because they wanted to buy it, and they couldn't get a hold of anybody. Like, we want to buy it, we want to save it, and then they happened to read the paper that morning before they left, and they seen it when they do the tax sales of places.
Yeah,
and it was like 7 a.m, and it was starting at 9. He said right after 9 o'clock, they owned it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
That's interesting.
So,
well, yeah, the owner who owns it now apparently doesn't live in Butte. And they don't have any plans for renovating it. They want to keep it for paranormal, which is pretty cool. But I'm concerned with the status of the building at this point that it won't last.
No.
It won't last another 50 years. It's just not. It's really going to go.
Well,
so
when I saw you doing the investigation earlier today, I'm like, dang, that building actually looks good for how old it is. But it's not going to last. Nothing like that lasts for forever.
No. And the state of the floors are so unlevel that the walls are starting to lean and bow, and the stairs are starting to come apart because of the weight of the building is shifting. You can see it on the banisters, and it's almost like, ooh, yeah, downstairs.
It's going to cave in on itself eventually.
Yeah, there is they uncovered an old, it looks like an old well, but the rest of the flooring downstairs when they built that basement was basically a 2x4 with flooring over the top of them sitting on dirt. Yeah. So all of that stuff is decaying and you're falling through. You're not falling through except for the room that has the well. That's pretty deep, but otherwise you're falling through, 6 inches, but still it's a little dicey. So I would love to see this building actually, if somebody had the money to come in and actually renovate it and get it structurally sound again and put it back together, it would be a brilliant hotel.
Or time machine.
Yeah.
Time machine would be cheaper.
So just really, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, we were talking about the girls that work there, and I found a couple stories just really quick about some of the gals that work there. Also, kind of a sad fact that many of the girls that work there, they actually would unalive themselves by the age of 30 if they have not found a husband, which is really sad. Some accidentally overdosed medication, stuff like that. Prime example we'll talk about is Eleanor Knott. I'm sure that he talked to you about Miss Madam Knott. She was actually part of the Dumas. It started in 1955. She took over the other lady that was involved there. Ruby was later. She fell in love with a married businessman in 1955. According to sources, they planned to run away together. The morning that they were supposed to run away, he lost his nerve and he changed his mind basically, and he never came to pick her up, which is super sad. Like, I could just see her waiting, you know. She was completely devastated. She lost hope of leaving the situation because even though they make money, it was a terrible situation, right?
Yeah.
So sources say she unalived herself, basically. And then we have Sarah. She worked at the Dumas during the 1917. She and her client, a miner named James, made plans to get married. Again, the whole scenario, run away. You know, he sent her a love letter that was on display. And actually, if you go down there, you'll see the love letter. That day she received the letter. James was killed in the mine explosion.
Oh, yes.
And Sarah, she just completely fell to pieces. And, you know, they say that she may have accidentally overdosed herself. And again, like we mentioned, they would do that. They would take the medicine because they want to escape the reality of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very, you know, it's possible that she just had a broken heart and couldn't do it anymore. You're talking about the experiences you had there. There's a lot of, some say that there's intelligent, but there's a lot of residual hauntings where it plays the tape over and over again. I think there's both there. I think it just depends on when you're there or what room you're in, you know? What do you think?
That's what I said on the live. I said, just because I'm not having a ton of experiences now doesn't mean that the people who have been here, if they've had experiences, they've had experiences, because that's the one thing with this paranormal stuff is that you can't count on the same thing to happen day in, day out. Every time you're there, it's not going to show the same for me as it's going to show the same for Dirty Birdie or show the same for you, Jesse. So it's your connection, that moment in time.
Yeah.
And I think if I came in here even tonight by myself, it may rock and roll. It's just, maybe I was catching them during a lull. Maybe I was too respectful, too quiet. Maybe they were taking a nap.
Actually, I did comment on that. I asked, like, do ghosts take lunch breaks? Because you were saying there's a bunch of activity or stuff's going off, and all of a sudden it just stopped.
It
and
stopped.
I'm like,
poof.
And I'm
gone.
like, I'm like, are they taking a lunch break or is it a union break?
Well,
so I don't know. You know, every day is going to be different.
Yeah. And I was reading too that when Michael, the one that I mentioned, and Travis, you know, they were partners in life. They bought the building in 2012. They were doing it as a fixer-upper to make it as a bed and breakfast. And from what I understand, that the the activity built up was because they basically were redoing everything or trying to redo everything. And some of the spirits who are attached to this building definitely notice their efforts. And they, you know, for various reasons, some of them may have supported it. And then there's others. You were mentioning like when people were saying there's, you know, a dark entity in there. I said before, yes, there could be, but I feel like it's also a protective spirit. There's people claiming that there's a guy in there and he's the judge is what they call him. He's not a very friendly spirit. Or there's also suggestion that there's a doctor, you know.
For the the women. I didn't run into anything negative or overly protective or anything like that. I just I felt only female spirits around. But again, that's a snapshot in time. If you came in here tonight or tomorrow, you may get. Somebody was on our lives who said they came in on Sunday and scared the hell out of her husband because he saw a really big, tall apparition on the stairs of a male. And so I just didn't have that. And maybe he was
Yeah.
protecting the girls because this guy came in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
I don't know.
I agree. And I also think too that there is one that does travel from the basement, and he is negative.
Wouldn't doubt it.
And he definitely shows himself, and yeah. So
Oh.
Well, I don't think you have brothels without violence. So,
correct.
Or bouncers.
or
Some of
bouncers.
these, yeah, some of these spirits
Yeah.
could be dark spirits, could
Yeah.
be bouncers, and they're like,
You bet.
there's a male here, and he's, I don't know, he's not on the up and up, or I don't like him. I'm
Mhm.
gonna show myself and put a little bit of fear into him. I don't know.
You bet.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Isn't there a photo that was, or one of the mediums that came in and they drew a madam?
yes, they drew, and I took a picture. Again, I'll post all of these pictures. I'll try to do like a mini video so that you guys can see all the pictures. I'll try to get that done tonight when I get back to the hotel. But a medium came in, and she was also an artist, and she was drawing a woman that was coming through that she felt was really, really negative, like really almost on the verge of saying demonic, like really bad. And she drew her face and her shoulders, but she was going to come in and finish the rest of it. Was like a upper body pose that she was doing. And she went into room 17, I believe, and on the 217, so on the top floor. And she, whatever happened to her, she got so fearful that Ted said she dropped to her knees and was so afraid that when she got up, she ran out of the hotel and she never came back. And she wouldn't even, that was it. She never finished the picture. They have the picture hanging. It was something centered around this woman and some kind of tragedy that happened. And it was affected her so much she could not finish the drawing.
Yeah. And that's not unheard of, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't pick up, and maybe it was just me, maybe I wasn't in the frame of mind to really connect. I brought my dowsing rods, and I didn't even feel like, I didn't even have the energy to pick them up, but I'm wondering if they were just taking my energy because I was really tired in there. Like I felt great until I walked in the doors, and then I became more and more drained as it went on. And I'm like, I was glad I could get out of there. But then we went to a bar that was a bathhouse where someone died in the bathhouse because he took a 6-pack of beer with him after he'd been drinking in the bar, went down into the bathhouse. These are old buildings, man, right? Built in the 1880s, 1870s, 1860s. He took some beer down there with him, and he died in the bathhouse from heat and alcohol.
Oh my gosh.
So that bar has stuff that flies off the wall. It's Ted's son that owns the bar, and stuff flies off the wall, and all kinds of stuff goes on in that building. So I was sitting in there feeling even more and more drained. I'm like, "Ooh, I got to get out of these buildings here are crazy. They're crazy active."
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, yeah, you got what, a couple century, or like you got this big chunk of time where everybody from everywhere is coming into here and just filling it up, and there's money everywhere, there's crime everywhere, it's nuts. So yeah, I'm pretty sure like every building's haunted.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't have history like this without hauntings. It's just not going to happen. But if you guys have not, hey Sherry, oh my gosh, Sherry, we're just getting ready to end the show, but you'll have to go back and watch the show. I think you'll like it. But it was this is a great place. This is a great building. If you're in Butte, make sure that you go through this building and then contact Ted, because that's who let you into the house, or the brothel. But he does all kinds of red light district tours and all kinds of stuff like that. He will hook you up. Yep.
We need to
all
support
right.
our history.
Well, thanks everybody for joining in. I love this episode. I can't get enough of Butte. I love it. So Jesse.
Yeah.
Birdie.
I'm good. Let's just make sure that we support our history, our historical buildings. You know, let's respect them and respect spirits, because it's really important. That's the only way we'll learn from the past, right? So,
You bet.
Yeah. And everybody that's watched the show, make sure you like, share, subscribe, share the show around, get the word of mouth out. We'd appreciate it. And have a good night.
see you
All
next
right,
week.
everybody. We'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.